It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. Joining me from New York is my colleague, Sally Patterson. Sally, good to have you with us.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 9 a.m. here in New York and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the United Kingdom sanctions more than 50 people linked to Russia. Alabama's Supreme Court rules frozen embryos can be considered children. And the Eiffel Tower remains closed due to strikes. But first, back to you, Tanvi, for the headlines.
US President Joe Biden's remarks for Putin at his campaign trail in San Francisco raise eyebrows at the Kremlin. US lawmaker Mike Gallagher on a visit to Taiwan reassures support regardless of election outcome, says need to ensure delivery of weapons to Taipei. Israel releases a report pointing to systematic sexual abuse of women during Hamas's October 7th attack, calls on the UN and other international bodies to address the issue. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar calls for radically reforming global multilateral system to resolve contentious issues at the 9th Raisina dialogue in New Delhi. As the West Asia conflict enters day 139 on Thursday, the Israeli army tanks launched artillery shells from southern Israel into Gaza, continuing its ongoing offensive. Israel's extensive military action, both from the air and the ground, has inflicted substantial damage on targets associated with terror activities in Gaza. Israeli officials released a report on Wednesday that stated that the October 7th attack by Hamas on southern Israel involved systematic and deliberate sexual assaults on civilians. The 35-page report of multiple accounts of sexual violence against women, children and men was presented to the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence and Conflict last month. The report is the first comprehensive survey on the gender-based abuses carried out during the Hamas's attack.
What we learned that this was an intentional way of behavior. In all of the crime scenes, in all the terrorist scenes that have happened, this systematic abuse, sadistic abuse, brutal abuse of women, children and men happened. Something that I don't know if ever happened like this, ever in the world.
And DD India correspondent Sarah Coates sent us this report from Tel Aviv a little while ago.
Well, this was compiled and published by the Association of Rape Crisis Centres in Israel. It has testimony from first responders, forensic experts, and also eyewitnesses, which claimed that when Hamas militants entered Israel back on October 7, that they used extreme acts of sexual violence against victims and in most cases killed these people after the rape or sometimes even during. It didn't go on to say exactly how many cases of extreme sexual violence there were, but what it does say is that victims were women, men, and also children. Here is the director of that association speaking out about what else they found for that report.
Meanwhile, on the ground, one Israeli was killed and 11 others wounded in a terror shooting attack carried out by 3 Palestinian gunmen near a checkpoint between Jerusalem and the West Bank settlement city Thursday morning. Visiting the site of deadly shooting, Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir called for more restrictions in the West Bank settlement. According to police, the trio opened fire with automatic weapons at Israelis waiting in traffic while heading towards Jerusalem, close to the West Bank town. Police also said 2 gunmen were shot dead and 1 was wounded.
By sending our thoughts and our prayers to the victim of this heinous terror attack, where 3 terrorists from Judea and Samaria area arrived to the highway behind us and opened fire on civilians. 8 of them were sent to the hospital in various conditions, and it's to our report by medical sources that there is 1 victim who is declared deceased, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. Large police forces arrived to the scene and managed to neutralize 2 terrorists on the scene of the attack, and 1 who was attempting to flee. They managed to neutralize that threat as well.
Now, US President Joe Biden's verbal attacks towards his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have sharply intensified as he continues his campaign trail. Last week, the US president blamed Putin and his thugs for the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. My colleague Sally Patterson is in New York. She gives us more on the Biden-Putin's recent tiff and other stories making headlines around the world. Sally, these statements do not going well with the already tense US-Russia relations.
That's right. The Kremlin said on Thursday that US President Joe Biden had debased the United States by cursing Russian President Vladimir Putin at a fundraising event in San Francisco on Wednesday. President Biden made the comments while speaking about threats to the world, including climate change. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov called Biden's language a disgrace. Now, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said Biden was senile and ready to start a war with Russia. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has sanctioned more than 50 individuals and entities linked to Russia. The UK Foreign Office said those included in the sanctions were key Russian importers and manufacturers of machine tools that are used to make defence systems and components ranging from missiles and engines to tanks and fighter jets. Denmark has agreed on a military aid package for Ukraine worth more than $247 million. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said that while it might not help Ukraine to wait and time, only action counts on the battlefield. She added that Ukraine's fight for freedom is Denmark's fight. Her country has already donated tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, tank ammunition, and anti-aircraft guns to Ukraine. Iran has allegedly supplied Russia with a significant quantity of potent surface-to-surface ballistic missiles, intensifying military collaboration between the 2 countries sanctioned by the United States. Iran's delivery of around 400 missiles are believed to include variants of short-range ballistic armaments. Both Iran and Russia declined to comment on the issue. Britain is backing outgoing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte to succeed Jens Stoltenberg as the next Secretary-General of the NATO alliance. Rutte is currently serving as Prime Minister in a transitional capacity after far-right leader Geert Wilders scored a stunning Dutch general election win in November. Now, Stoltenberg's successor will take office at a crucial time, tasked with sustaining NATO members' support for Ukraine while trying to prevent any escalation that would draw the alliance directly into a war with Russia. In a landmark decision, the US state of Alabama's Supreme Court has ruled frozen embryos can be considered children and that they are entitled to the same legal rights as other unborn children. The decision was issued in response to wrongful death claims brought against a fertility clinic in Alabama in 2021 after a patient broke into an IVF freezer and dropped a number of trays. And Donald Trump has filed a petition to dismiss charges against him for holding onto classified documents after he left the White House. It comes after the former US president admitted to retaining the material during an interview on US cable news channel Fox News. DD India's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The judge in the case set a Thursday deadline for Donald Trump and his team to file pre-trial motions disputing the charges against him. He's accused of taking classified records from the White House after he left office and obstructing efforts to have them returned. Prosecutor and special counsel Jack Smith says Trump is now employing a relentless plan to try and delay the trial at any cost. The thinking being that he's trying to push the May start date back past the November presidential election in the hopes of winning that election and then getting the charges dropped when he becomes president. He's facing 41 criminal charges over the willful retention of national defence information. The documents were recovered back in August 2022 after the FBI raided his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. And then on Tuesday evening, during a town hall interview on Fox News, the former president was asked about the documents, the host asking him why he didn't hand them over when the Justice Department requested them, to which he answered, "I didn't have to hand them over," essentially admitting wrongdoing and suggesting that he had the documents and knowingly kept them even after he was subpoenaed to return them. Trump has previously claimed that being president meant he was able to declassify documents as he saw fit, which under US law is not true. The former president is scheduled to stand trial in his first criminal case in New York next month. That one is in relation to alleged hush money payments he made to an adult film star. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
France's iconic Eiffel Tower is closed for the fourth day following a workers' strike, calling for a review of financial management by Paris's City Hall. The union warned that the closure could be extended if local officials refuse to negotiate. The tower's operator has advised ticket holders to check the website before showing up or to postpone their visit. That's it from me here in New York. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Sally, for joining us all. Sally Patterson joining us all from New York. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. India's coffee industry brews up business opportunities in Dubai, taking forward the country's global coffee ambitions. And Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 index raced to a record peak on Thursday, breaking levels last seen in 1989.
We're going to be talking about Panama-India relations, the importance of Panama in the region, and the outlook for Panama and for Latin America as they integrate deeper with India.
In today's world, Panama especially accepts and understands very well the centrality of India in the world. I think the cornerstone of our relation is common values. Panama is a lighthouse for democracy in Latin America, and India is the largest democracy in the world. The connectivity and the route that connects everyone and everything is the concept that could be already used by India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to New Delhi now. On the second day of the 9th edition of the Raisina Dialogue 2024, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has again called for radically reforming the United Nations Security Council, UNSC. He was speaking on the session named A Tapestry of Truths. Can the two hemispheres agree? The panel included Foreign Minister of the Netherlands, Harke Bruin-Slot, Bolivia's former president, Jorge Quiroga, diplomatic advisor to the UAE President, Anwar bin Mohammad Gargash, and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tanzania, Janwari Yusuf Makamba. Dr. Jaishankar said all big issues haven't found multilateralism, though the sentiment is strong for change. Notably, there have been several calls for reforms and more balanced and responsive representation in the 5-membered UN Security Council.
if you take the UN, when the UN was invented, it had at least about approximately 50 members. We have 4 times the members. So it's a common sense proposition that you can't continue the same way when you have 4 times the members. We use the UN very often to illustrate that point. We've also seen, if you look at the last 5 years, all the big issues, in a way, we have not been able to find multilateral solutions. So the results are also, or the lack of results demonstrate the case for reform.
So as developing nations push for reforms in multilateral institutions such as that like the UN, call for global rebalancing are growing louder. DD India's Jessica Taneja spoke to Secretary of State at the Foreign Affairs Ministry of the Republic of Poland.
The India-EU trade deal, it's the toughest negotiation possible. It's been there in the talks. 7th round of talks were held quite recently. We're expecting some fast-tracking in that FTA. How do you view this entire deal, and how important do you think it is at this point to have an FTA with India in the current geo-economic turbulent scenario we're living in?
It's very important. I know it's very cumbersome because India has one government and with a strong mandate to rule. I expect it to have that mandate after the coming election. We've got 27 governments, and that is way more complicated to agree. Yes, it's important. I think they are probably now dividing into a few parts. So some sectors are covered instead of being everything in one bag, which is even more difficult. But I think there is an understanding in the EU that we need that agreement because we need to formalise our economic relations, trading relations, also because it facilitates sales of European companies in India. And removes certain barriers and bureaucratic procedures. So it's very important for the EU as a whole as much as it is for India. And I said there is an understanding now that if you look at the Indo-Pacific as a region, India is not only a huge market, but it's also a country which I said before, but it's very important, shares our values.
So more on the Raisina Chronicles. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, had discussions with his counterparts of various countries in New Delhi on Thursday on the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue 2024. He met with Janina Tevani Mencomo, the Foreign Minister of Panama. He took to social media platform X to share about the discussion held between them. He stated that both sides had a fruitful discussion on connectivity, mobility and economic cooperation. On the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue 2024 in New Delhi, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also met UK's Shadow Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. Sharing pictures from the meeting on social media platform X, Dr. Jaishankar said that the two leaders spoke about deepening people-to-people relations and economic cooperation between the two countries. He also had a separate conversation with Italy's Senator Giulio Terzi. Now, India's Minister of State for External Affairs, V. Muralidharan, participated in the second session of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting on global governance reform in Rio de Janeiro on Thursday. In the meeting, the minister emphasized that current multilateral governance architecture is outdated and comprehensive multilateral reforms through effective, result-oriented, time-bound process is required. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a visit to the western Indian state of Gujarat. He attended the Golden Jubilee celebration of Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation. India's Prime Minister also visited an exhibition. Over 1.25 lakh farmers witnessed this event at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation is testimony of the resilience of cooperatives in India, their entrepreneurial spirit and strong determination of farmers, which has made Amul one of the strongest dairy brands in the world. Staying in Asia, US lawmaker Mike Gallagher met with Taiwan's President-elect Lai Ching-te on Thursday and reinforced support amid the threat from China. Speaking during a meeting with Lai and delegations from both sides, US Representative Mike Gallagher said, America stands with Taiwan. Gallagher praised the recent election in Taiwan as well as Lai's rhetoric upon winning the contest. Gallagher, the chair of the House of Representatives Select Committee on China, was accompanied by 4 other lawmakers on the trip. This trip ends on Saturday. Gallagher also met Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen, during which he said the US delegation's trip was to show bipartisan support for the island.
And in light of that, I just want to say thank you, Madam President, for not only being an incredible leader here in Taiwan, but really distinguishing yourself as a leader within the free world. And today, freedom is under attack from authoritarian aggression, and we need to be more vigilant than ever if we want to pass on this gift of freedom we've been given to the next generation.
And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Polish and Ukrainian governments are all set to meet in Warsaw on March 28th after Polish Prime Minister rejected Ukraine's president's request for urgent talks on border blockades by Polish farmers. Ukraine's Zelensky called on Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Polish President Andrzej Duda and European Union officials to come to the Ukrainian-Polish border to discuss the protests by farmers. Italy will now be able to build migrant processing centres on Albanian territory after 77 deputies in the 140-seat parliament voted in favour of the deal. Under this 5-year deal, up to 3,000 migrants will be able to take shelter at these camps. The agreement is part of the Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni's efforts to share the burden of addressing migration with other European countries. Emergency departments of South Korea's biggest hospitals were on red alert on Thursday as trainee doctors vowed to stay off the job in protest at government's plans to increase medical school admissions to boost the healthcare sector. The protest by almost 2/3 of the country's young doctors had forced hospitals to turn away patients and cancel procedures. So far, more than 8,400 doctors have joined this walkout. Japanese stocks raced to a record peak on Thursday, breaking levels last seen in 1989 as cheap valuations and corporate reforms lure foreign money looking for alternatives to battered Chinese markets. The Nikkei 225 index rose as high as 39,157 points and finished 2.19% higher at 39,099, above the previous all-time peak of 38,957 points, touched on the final trading day back in 1989. So the 34 years it has taken to regain its footing is a record in itself for a major market and is a decade longer than Wall Street took to recoup losses from the 1929 crash and the Great Depression. Still in Asia, the Coffee Board of India organized a buyer-seller meet at Dubai, marking a new chapter in the industry's global expansion. The event was held on the sidelines of Gulf Food 2024 and jointly organized by the Indian Embassy in UAE and the Coffee Board of India. CEO of the Coffee Board of India, KG Jagadish, provided a comprehensive overview of the country's coffee industry at the event. He highlighted how the vast coffee plantations spanning over 500,000 hectares are supporting millions of farming families and also contributing to biodiversity of local flora and fauna and contributing to sustainability.
We grow coffee in rich Western and Eastern Ghats. These Western and Eastern Ghats host more than 9,000 species of biodiversity. But if you see the ownership of the land, 70% or more than 70% of land is owned by private people. Why are they maintaining the forestry cover, tree cover? That's because of coffee. Without coffee, for coffee they need to have the tree cover. So the coffee in a way is contributing to sustainability of Western and Eastern Ghats.
For the first time, holy relics of Lord Buddha and his two chief disciples, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, arrived from India at the National Museum in Bangkok on Thursday. The sacred antiquities were brought for a 26-day exposition on board an Indian Air Force aircraft. The relics were excavated at the Piprawa village in India's Uttar Pradesh state. The holy artifacts will be featured across multiple venues in Thailand. And as we end this edition of DD India Global, we bring you a cute selfie made by a curious fox after stealing an RSPCA officer's phone. RSPCA being the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. The rescuer was called to the scene to assist an injured fox and set up his phone to record the action. But another fox decided to steal the limelight as it ran off with the phone. Take a look. So this video of this curious fox stealing the limelight by stealing the rescuer's camera mobile phone has gone viral, and it's clearly amusing to watch as she takes it a little mile ahead before dropping the phone in the bushes. Cute selfie there. That's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.